Okay, let's go on with the average function. The average function is very similar to sum, but instead of calculating the sum, it calculates the average. First of all, we reopen example.xlsx. Okay, a clean one. Okay, so equal average. Okay, well, exactly like mean, max, and sum, it accepts a wide range of arguments, almost unlimited, one to many. It can be ranges, and they can be a single number as well. So select an entire range. Let's calculate the average. 11.69. It's exactly the same as doing sum divided by 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 17 8 17. So it's the same as sum divided by 17. Oh, no, it's not divided by 17 but by 18. Okay, obviously this is much safer, because if you remove an item or if you add an item, well, here you should manually change the divided by 18, here not. Okay, so average is rather straightforward. Let's go to some functions which are not straightforward at all. SUMIF, COUNTIF, and AVERAGEIF. They calculate sum, count, and an average under some specific conditions. So only take into consideration only those cells which respect some conditions. Let's start with SUMIF. Okay, so delete. For example, suppose I want to calculate the sum of column C considering only French students. Well, you could do it manually, and at exams there are people who do it manually in this way. French, 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 French. Okay. Well, the problem is clearly if I add a new French student, or if one of the students changes nationality. Well, it's rather strange, but you may have other examples where things change. Okay, obviously in that case you cannot do it in this way. SUMIF. Okay. SUMIF, as you can see, is a function which requires 3 arguments. The third one is optional, but I strongly suggest you to use it always. Okay, pay attention, because the arguments are very tricky. Many students confuse the first with the last. Okay, the first argument is called range, but it is the range where you have to look for the condition. So not the range of numbers that you have to sum, it's the range where you check the condition. In my case, the range where I check the nationality is this one. Okay. So it's not C1, C19. C1, C19 is the range where I calculate the sum. The first range, however, for SUMIF is the range where you check the condition. Second argument is the criteria, French. Unfortunately, French, since it is a text, must go between quotations. Okay. The only thing which in SUMIF cannot go between quotation as a criteria is a number or a cell. Okay. Anything else, text or logical operators such as larger than, smaller than, all these things go between quotations. These are the quotations. Okay. Semicolon. Third argument, finally, is the range where you calculate the sum, and this time the range is this one. Obviously, the first and the last range must have the same amount of cells. If they have a different amount, the function doesn't work or returns an error. Okay, so let's repeat. First argument is the range where you check. Second argument, the criteria that you check. Third argument, the range where you sum. Don't confuse the first with the third. I know that you are tempted to start with a range that you sum, but you must start with a range that you check. Okay, let's make another example. calculate the sum of numbers in column E, considering only those numbers whose corresponding number in column D is smaller than 5. So calculate the sum of numbers in column E, considering only those numbers whose corresponding value in column D is smaller than 5. Okay, let's do it. SUMIF range. Where you have to check? You have to check in column D. What you have to check? The criteria is smaller than 5. Criteria which contains smaller, larger, smaller or equal, larger or equal, different, are indicated in this way. Quotation, smaller, 5. Okay. Well, I know that it sounds odd, especially putting the quotation, especially for those of you who have computer experience. This is a very strange way of putting a logical operator, but it's the very, very old way. Excel is an extremely old program, and that's the way it works. Only SUMIF, COUNTIF and AVERAGEIF works in this way. The other function will work differently. Sum range, clearly the range where you have to sum, which is E2 colon E19. Okay. So the criteria here, always enclosed between quotation, is smaller than 5. Okay. Same thing if I ask you larger than 5, okay, smaller or equal, larger or equal, okay, and in case I ask you different from 5, different, this is the symbols or symbol of different. Okay. If I tell you whose corresponding value is equal to 5, you can put an equal, which is correct, or only in this case you can simply write 5 without any quotation. It's the only case where you can write something without quotation as criteria for SUMIF. Okay, so larger than 5, smaller than 5, different from 5, smaller or equal, larger or equal, equal, or equal can be also alternatively written in this way. Okay. Same thing as if I tell you whose corresponding value is equal to, let's say, cell A13. So A13. Okay. In this case, the criteria is A13, which means 12. So identically equal to 12. The criteria is always fixed, so it's not a range. I don't want to see ranges here. Okay. Okay. Obviously now the result will be clearly 0, because no value in column D is equal exactly to 12. Let's see. 0, because no value in column D is equal exactly to 12. Okay, let's put it as it was, so smaller than 5. Okay. Let's make another example. Calculate the sum of numbers in column D, considering only those numbers smaller, always smaller, larger than 5. Okay, look here. Here the situation is a little different. I am considering column D. I'm summing the numbers which are larger than 5. So this entire thing can be reformulated in this way. Calculate the sum of numbers in column D which are, okay, same thing, okay, which this is more common speech, this is more mathematical, considering only those numbers larger than 5. Okay, so here in this case column D is at the same time the range which must be summed and the range which must be checked. So equal sum sorry, SUMIF D2 D19. So I check in D2 D19, locate numbers larger than 5, and sum in D2 D19. Okay, so in this case, the place where I check and the place where I sum are the same. Okay, this is a very typical case. Very often the place where you check and the place where you sum is the same. Okay. What happens if you don't specify the last argument? You can see it's optional. When you don't specify the last argument, Excel assumes it is identical to the first one. Okay. So in cases like this, and only in cases like this, you may omit the last argument. So only in cases like this, the last argument may be omitted. Excel will assume it's identical to the first one. Okay. But if you don't omit it and you leave it, it's the same. So it will be considered correct. So I would suggest never omit it. Okay, SUMIF, this is the behavior of SUMIF. It's, I think, rather straightforward. Well, you just have to practice a little bit with the condition. Let's see the COUNTIF and AVERAGEIF, which are really identical. AVERAGEIF is the same, but instead of calculating the sum, it calculates the average. So let's calculate the average of number 1 for Spanish students. So average, I have to check for Spanish students. Spanish. And I have to calculate the average of number 1. Okay. Same thing as SUMIF, but it calculates the average. Okay. Well, you can put also here the same conditions as SUMIF. Okay, so but now not now, because in column B we have only alphanumeric values. But if you build something like this, sorry, SUMIF AVERAGEIF smaller than 5, and you calculate the sum here. Okay. So everything which has been said for SUMIF is valid for AVERAGEIF exactly in the same way. So, okay. Let's see what happens, just for my curiosity, because I don't know it, if you specify something which does not exist. For example, Danish. Okay. I think there is no Danish people inside. Okay, AVERAGEIF gives you an error, clearly, because you cannot calculate the average of 0 people. SUMIF, instead, gives you 0, because the sum of no people is 0. The average of no people doesn't exist. Okay. COUNTIF is identical, but even simpler. Sorry, equal COUNTIF. Okay, you have only the range and the criteria. So, for example, count how many Spanish people do we have. Spanish. Okay. Here you don't have to calculate any sum. You don't have to calculate any average. So you're simply counting. You're counting how many Spanish people do we have. 4. Count how many Danish people do we have. Probably the result will be 0. 0. Okay. Just a little technical detail. If you look at AVERAGEIF, Spanish, AVERAGEIF, well, it's the same, and I say really the same, as doing SUMIF divided by COUNTIF. So look, here is AVERAGEIF of the Spanish. You do SUMIF. You check here for Spanish people. You sum up here. So SUMIF divided by COUNTIF B2 B19 Spanish. Okay, so calculating average if or SUMIF divided by COUNTIF is exactly the same, as you can see. Okay. Well, average if is a little more handy. Okay, so we have seen this kind of function. It's a very simple usage of if. You are strongly limited. Okay, you cannot make dynamic condition, for example. So it must be static. So smaller than 5, Spanish, equal to 3, larger than 4, different from 7. Okay, you cannot, or equal to a fixed cell. You cannot make it equal to a variable cell. Okay, if you want to do something more elaborate, you have to use the logical functions, if, and, or, and not. Let's see how to use them. Go to logical sheet. Well, we start with if. First of all, we take a look at the function. If wants 3 arguments, the second and the third are optional. Please, I strongly recommend you, more strongly than before, use them. So don't omit them. You will see strange results if you omit them. The first one is a test. So you are checking something. The second one is the value, which if must display in case the test is true. And the third one is the value that if must display in case the test is false. Let's see, for example, if a variable quantity is smaller than requested quantity, semicolon. So first argument, you can see I put a condition. This time the condition is put, I will say, in a more logical way. So something smaller, larger, equal, different, smaller, equal, larger, equal, something else. Okay, so a real logical test. It's not like SUMIF, so no quotation. Here the condition must be written in, let's say, in the formal mathematical way. Here the value that we should display in case the condition is true. Well, in case the requested quantity is larger than the variable quantity, reorder immediately. Okay. Yeah. Okay, semicolon. And here what we have to write in case the condition be false. Okay. Since reorder immediately and okay are text, I write them with a quotation. Okay. If you write instead numbers or formulas, because you can also put formulas here, you write without quotation. We will see some examples later. So let's see. Okay, you can drag it down. Dragging down works perfectly, so d2 smaller than e2 becomes d3 smaller than e3, and so on. Okay, you can see some of them have reorder immediately written, because 13 larger than 10, 15 larger than 7. Okay, and this is the first example. Let's see other examples, more complicated. So, if the size is bigger, or better, if the price is larger than 50, write expensive, otherwise write cheap. So, equal if price larger than 50, we write expensive, otherwise we write cheap. So rather straightforward, I would say. Okay, you can drag down to see whether it works. Some are cheap, some are expensive. Okay, now let me remove. Okay, now other examples. Let me think. If price multiplied by a variable quantity is larger than 300, write too much. Otherwise, write a dash. So if price by a variable quantity okay, so equal if price multiplied by a variable quantity. So you can see that you can put also formulas. Well, if you want, you could put here also other functions. So if the square root of the logarithm of price divided by the count of Spanish students, etc., etc. So you can complicate the condition as you want. It's not limited to something larger to something else. You can make it as complicated as you want, putting function formulas here. In this case, we just put a multiplication. In this case, we write too much. Otherwise, we write a dash. The dash is this symbol here, the little horizontal line, not to be confused with the underscore, which is this symbol here. Okay, this is the dash. Okay, at exam, I don't explain you what is a dash. Okay, let's see. Okay. Now, if price is larger than 50, write a variable quantity minus requested quantity. Otherwise, write price by a variable quantity. So extremely strange thing. Okay, it's a silly exercise, obviously. So if the price is larger than 50, write a variable quantity minus requested quantity. Otherwise, write price by a variable quantity equal if price larger than 50, write a variable quantity minus requested quantity. Otherwise, write price by a variable quantity. This little silly example was to show you that not only you can, in the first argument, the logical test, put formulas, function, mathematical operation, but you can do the same also in the two fields. So you're not restricted to text here. You can put numbers, you can put numerical mathematical operation, you can put also the square root of the price, whatever you want. You can put also the count of Spanish people in the other. Oh, let's do it. Otherwise, write the count of big items. So very strange. Okay. Equal if price larger than 50. Okay, in this case we write a variable quantity minus requested quantity. Okay. Otherwise, we write the count of big items. So count if the items criteria big. Okay. So as you can see, in the third field of in the third argument of the if function, I put another function which itself had other two arguments. In this case, when you nest one function inside the other, it is called nested functions. Pay attention to the parentheses. Okay, you must have a clear idea of what is inside what. So in this case, this entire thing up to this parenthesis is the third argument of the if function. Okay, now I press 4. Okay, I would like to drag it down. Okay, let's see what happens. Apparently everything is okay, but is it really okay? Does it work dragging this function down, this formula down? Well, f2 will become f3, and this is fine. d2 and e2 becomes d3 and d3, and this is fine. But b2, b16, if you drag down, will become b3, b17, which doesn't exist, b4, b18, and then we start to take things which don't have anything to do. Okay, so b2, b16, you need to dollarize it. So you need to build something like this, or at least to dollarize the numbers. Okay. So now let's drag. Okay. You don't easily distinguish the error here, but you're using a range and you don't want this range to be moved. Okay. So these are some little examples of the usage of if. Let's see let's try to complicate the thing. Okay, if price is larger than 50, write expensive, semicolon. Otherwise, pay attention, if a variable quantity is smaller than requested quantity, write cheap and reorder. Otherwise, write cheap. So if price is larger than 50, in this case very simple, write expensive and nothing else. If it is not larger than 50, you must recheck something else. You must check whether a variable quantity is smaller than a requested quantity. In case it is, write cheap and reorder. In case it is not, write cheap. Okay, so it's very clear that you must build two if here, one inside the other. So it's possible, unfortunately for you, to have two ifs, one inside the other, equal if. Well, first logical test, price larger than 50. The value in case the logical test is true, very easy, expensive. And the value in case the logical test is false. Pay attention, because now I must put a second if. I put some space. These spaces are not necessary, just to figure out what I'm doing. If, okay, so as a third argument of the external if, I am putting another if. Logical test, a variable quantity smaller than requested quantity, we write cheap and reorder. Otherwise, we write simply cheap. Now pay attention to the amount of parentheses you close. This parenthesis is this one, is to close the internal if. I leave some spaces just to understand. This one is to close the external if. Okay. Okay, so this third argument of the external if is another if. So this is one if inside the other. It works fine. Let's see. Okay, cheap and reorder. This is cheap and reorder. Another similar example. If price is larger than 50, write, no, if price is larger than 50, in this case, if item is big, write big and expensive. Otherwise, write small and expensive, semicolon. Otherwise, not price, not large, write cheap. Okay, so if the price is larger than 15, in this case, if the item is big, write big and expensive. Otherwise, write small and expensive. Otherwise, I mean when the price is not larger than 50, write cheap. Okay, in this case, again, one if inside the other. The difference is that here, the inner if is the second argument and not the third one. Equal if price larger than 50. Okay, in this case, check again if item is big. Here, the equal is possible also when you're dealing with text, but you have to enclose the text in quotation. Okay, in this case we write big and expensive. Otherwise we write small and expensive. Okay, now I leave some space and last cheap. Okay, so external condition, argument in case the external condition is true, it's another if, and argument in case the external condition is false. Okay. Oh, they are cheap, and they are not big and expensive. Very strange. B2 is never big. Okay. Big items are always cheap. Okay. Let's see the usage of AND OR. You can do more or less the same thing, so putting one if inside another, but in a different way using AND OR. Let's see. So if price is smaller than 50 and item is big, write, let's say, and item is small, write small and expensive. Otherwise, write a dash. Okay, you can solve this thing here in two ways: putting one if inside another, which we'll do right now, or with a usage of function AND. Let's see what one if inside another equal if price smaller than 50. In this case, I recheck whether item is small, okay, and only in this case I write small and expensive. Okay, if it is not small, I will write a dash, and if it is not smaller than 50, smaller, so not small, well, small and expensive doesn't make sense because I check for a price smaller than 50, but doesn't matter. I write a dash also here. So only if the price is smaller than 50 and b2 is equal to small, I write the sentence. Otherwise, I write dash. There is a little chaos here with parentheses. Okay, now parentheses are okay. Okay, this is the second argument between two semicolons, the third argument. Okay, so in case the price is not smaller than 50 or the object is not small, I write a dash. Okay, this is the first solution. However, in cases like this, there is a much easy to understand solution, and it uses the operator AND. First of all, I will write it in the wrong way, but which is much more natural. Equal if logical test price smaller than 50 and size equal small. In this case, we write small and expensive. Otherwise, we write a dash. Okay, this is, let's say, the human way of writing it. Condition with AND in the middle. What to write if the condition is true, and what to write if the condition is false. I imagine that you know the meaning of the logical AND. It means that both must be true. Okay. Well, unfortunately, Excel is not logical. Let's see. As you can see, Excel complains. Because for Excel, AND cannot stay here. Okay. For Excel, AND must be written here. And here you must put instead a semicolon. So you can tell me that it's silly. In fact, it is, but that's the way Excel works. So for Excel, AND is a function, and therefore you cannot put it between two conditions, but you must put at the beginning. So AND, and then all the conditions which are ended. Okay. So instead of putting it in the middle, you put it in at the beginning. Okay, and it works. Okay, so remember that AND, well, if I were you, I would write AND in the middle, read it and check that it works, and then rewrite it at the beginning. Okay, let's do another examples. If object is big and a variable quantity larger than 10, write cell okay, if object is big, so object is big and a variable quantity larger than 10. Now we fix the condition. Like this, Excel will not accept it. We have to write AND in front. Okay, now it works. Write cell away, otherwise write okay. OR works exactly in the same way. I underlined that it's the logical OR. It means that either the first or the second or both can be true. Okay, it's not the common language OR. The common language OR means either the first or the second can be true, but not both. The logical OR means first, second, or both can be true. Okay, so in the common speech, if you say I will come by bus or take my bicycle, well, in this case, the OR does not mean that you take both the bus and the bicycle. It means that either one or the other. Okay, the logical OR instead has another meaning. It means that either the first, the second, or both. Okay. So, if object is big or medium, write, what should we write? Well, not small. Otherwise, write nothing. Okay. Equal if size is equal to big or size is equal to medium, write not small. Okay, first of all, let's fix the OR. Semicolon. It's the same problem as AND. It's identical. Okay. And last, how to write nothing? Well, with nothing, I don't mean N-O-T-H-I-N-G. I mean nothing. Well, nothing, you open the quotation and close it. Or I don't want to see open the quotation, space, close. This is a space. It's not nothing. Open the quotation and close, it's nothing. And close the parentheses. Not small. Okay. Okay. Another example. If object is small or price smaller than 10, write okay. Otherwise, write a space. So equal if. Here you can see the meaning of the logical OR. If the object is small or the price is smaller than 10, write OK. We will write OK whenever the object is small, whenever the price is smaller than 10, or whenever both are true. Okay? If object equal small or price smaller than 10. Now we fix this OR because okay. In this case we write OK. Otherwise a space. Drag down. Okay. Not. Well, honestly, according to my opinion, not is not necessary. Because whenever you have a condition such as price smaller than 12, and they say price not smaller than 12, you write price larger or equal. So not is not really necessary. But if you want to, you may use it to invert the condition. So for example, if I ask you, if object is not small, write ABC, otherwise a dash. So equal if. Well, you could test if object is medium or object is large, but it's maybe easier to write if not, open parenthesis, size equal small, close parenthesis, ABC, otherwise a dash. Okay, so with a not in front, and don't forget the parentheses, you completely reverse the condition. Okay? So whatever was true before, now with the not in front is false. Okay, so for things which are not small, you should see ABC. In fact, you can see. Okay, let's complicate a little bit the logical functions with a final exercise. First of all, I make some space. Okay. Calculate the requested quantity by price plus the corresponding shipping cost according to size. So for each item you have to calculate price by requested quantity, and this is easy, plus the corresponding transport cost, but with changes according to size. And I don't want you to do manually. It's not valid to look, this is big, so I sum up 15, and this is small, I sum up 1. No, it's not valid. You have to do it automatically. So equal requested quantity by price, and this is easy, plus, now you have to put an if in case the size is big, you have to sum this thing here. Okay. Otherwise, in case the size is not big, what do we have to do? Well, we have to check whether the size is medium. So if size is medium, you have to sum the medium. Okay. Otherwise, well, here it's not necessary to check again if the size is small, because if the size is not big, if the size is not medium, automatically the size is small. So you have to sum up this quantity here. Close all the necessary parentheses, this one and this one. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's review it. First of all, there is a formula, which is the first part of the formula. Then I sum. You can see I can sum an if to a formula, something which may seem unreasonable, but since this if always gives you numbers, because B21, B20, B19 are always numbers, I can sum a number to another number. Okay, the if checks whether the item is big. In this case, straightforward, gives you 15, B21. If it is not big, it checks again whether it's medium. In this case, it gives you 5, I think. And if it is not medium, well, automatically it's small. Okay. You could write the same thing in at least 2 other different ways. Okay. One way is the following. Instead of typing yourself big here, you take big from here. But in this case, so wait, there is a mistake. I have done a mistake, a severe mistake. You can see I have dragged it down. Dragging it down, E2 and F2 becomes correctly E3 and F3. But B2 becomes correctly B3, but B21 should not become B22. It's fixed B21. Okay, so big mistake on my side. I have to put at least $here, $here, and $here. If you want, you can put the dollar also in front of the B. Okay, now I can drag. Okay, it changes a little bit. Okay. The same formula, as I told you before, can be written in at least two other different ways. First of all, if you don't want to type big with your hands, well, for big it's not a problem, but if it is a longer word, you may mistype it. You can take it from here, big. In this case, remember to dollarize it, okay, because you are planning to drag down. Same thing here. Instead of medium, we take $22. Okay. So first way to change it. I will undo. Okay. Second way to write it. If you want same thing, you can write it in this way. Instead of doing the mathematical operation external, you can do it internal. Here, you have unfortunately to repeat it 3 times. Okay? So if it is big, you make this operation. If it is medium, you make this operation. If it is small, you make this operation. Well, it's exactly the same, but just in case you don't like to do an external mathematical operation, you want to do it inside. Okay? So the result is identical. Okay, now we are over with logical function. Finally, we go to the easy text function. They are so easy that every year I'm wondering why I keep them in the program. Okay, this is a sentence we use as an example. This text function are just to show you that there exists some text function in Excel. There exist many of them. In case you plan to work with text, you can explore them yourself. We just show you 5 functions. The length, it gives you the length of a text. Len of A1, 36. Right, okay, it gives you the rightmost letters. Suppose I ask you, tell me the 5 last characters of this sentence. So last means here on the right. So whenever I ask you for the last characters of a sentence, I mean the characters on the right, obviously. So sentence, 5 characters, ample. Left gives you the first characters. For example, I ask you the first 6 characters. Left 6. The result will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This space I, because the space is a character itself. Okay. Concatenate. Concatenate is used to put some words together one after the other. Suppose I tell you, please take what is written here in this cell, okay, put a dash, so a dash, put what is written in this cell here, oops, wait, okay, then put 3 spaces, and then put the length of the sentence here. You can see you can concatenate the content of some cells together with mixed with other text as you want. You can put as you want. It's more or less like SUM. It accepts an unlimited amount of arguments. Okay. Well, it does not accept ranges, but accepts only single cells, and it concatenates them together, one after the other, rather straight. Something which you could do manually. But if you want to do it automatically, because these cells continuously change, you can do it automatically. REPT simply repeats the same text over and over. Suppose I ask you to write, I like Excel 100 times. Well, you can type it with your hands, but much easier. I like Excel. I like well, there is a little problem. You can see I and Excel are sticked together, so we put a space after Excel. So, oh, you put an exclamation mark also. Okay, much better. Okay,